gender will be more likely to stay with the pack when they reach maturity.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Jamie and I have Andrew on camera with me this afternoon. Brent is out and about on Rusty and he has Tebs on the back of his vehicle, and we have an exciting, if somewhat warm afternoon planned. It is apparently 27 degrees centigrade, which is about 81, though it definitely feels warmer in the sun whenever we do see it. And I guess we're seeing the tail end of the cold front that came through over the last few days. I don't know, a very strange feel to the weather this afternoon. And I hear you've been highly entertained while you were waiting for the start of the Sunset Safari by that buffalo on the Djuma Dam camera who was resting his head pillowed on his horns, which I can only imagine for a buffalo must be the most comfortable way of sleeping, I guess. Cloudsgate, you even suggested, or you even asked, who needs a pillow when you have a big boss of horns to rest your head upon? Thoroughly entertaining. I'm actually a little way away from the Djuma Dam at the moment. I've come across to the western edge of Djuma to see if I can see any signs of the wonderful Queen of Djuma, Karula. I know that Scott said he had tracks of her around this area, so I'll be keeping an eye out for her. Off chatting a little bit about that buffalo lying spread-eagled in the sun. Sleepy one, you were wondering, because you're obviously having a good look at the ticks that one always finds around buffalo. You were wondering if they carry any diseases like the deer ticks do in the US. Oh, shame. Hello, little one. I can see you there. Sleepy Steenbok. Sorry, sleepy one. In this case, both the viewer and the Steenbok that was fast asleep in the shade before we came round. Sorry, girl. I saw the one, her mate, dash off into the bushes, and I just assumed he was on his own. I didn't see her. She's now doing a very good job of pretending to be a Steenbok statue. Don't forget that we are live and that we're also interactive, so you can send us through your questions or your comments on hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter, or you can email them through to questions@wildearth.tv. She dashed a little bit further, realized that we can in fact see her.
I think she lay down.
And she lay down. determined to have that nap. Answering the question for Sleepy One. Is she there?
She's lying down there.
Oh, she's lying down there. I'm not being silly. Andrew has spotted her. I can't see her at all. I feel like I'm going mad.
There we go, there we go.
Oh, there she is. Hardly hidden away. But yes, I was in the middle of answering Sleepy One's question about the ticks. However, I believe that Brent has made his way to the buffaloes in question. So let's head over so he can say good afternoon and maybe he can finish off that answer.
So we just decided to pop in to the Djuma pan, and there's quite a bit going on here. There's a couple of buffalo, a hippo, and those Egyptian geese. Welcome to the Sunset Safari. My name is Brent Smith. I have Tebs on camera, and hopefully there's going to be lots of animals about. I was actually coming down to see if there had been any sign of ellies during the day. It doesn't look like it. And we got some red-billed oxpeckers on the back of the hippo. If we zoom in on that, you can see what he's doing there. They're actually keeping off he goes. Quite often they keep the wounds open on a lot of these animals, specifically hippo and buffalo. There we go, you can see getting right in there and feeding off the blood. So they can be quite an irritation to any animal that's got some open wounds. And that looks like a tusk mark and a drink. A hippo not only provides a meal, but a nice safe drinking spot. So as we arrived, there were a whole bunch of terrapins actually basking on the back of the hippo. Oh, I can see that saw, and the hippo sort of flinches as the oxpecker gets deeper in there. So they'll actually maintain these wounds, keep them open. And obviously in a drought period like this hippo's got no deeper water to go into where it'd normally be able to escape from the attentions of the oxpeckers. So oxpeckers feed off ticks as well as the living fish. So obviously they like blood, and the ticks of course are eating blood from the animals, so it makes not too far a push to see them. There we go, opening up those scabs and eating the flesh and blood straight from the animal, bypassing the middleman. So the only way it has access is if this hippo has been in a fight with another hippo. Otherwise that really thick skin would keep it protected. So we had a question about ticks. I'm afraid I just can't recall. From Sleepy One on YouTube, and wants to know if the ticks in Africa. We can see some ticks. It looks like under the hippo's ear there, behind his ear. It lifts his ear a little bit. A lot of the buffalo are full of ticks. The Sleepy One would like to know, there we go, there's a little tick underneath the ear. I can just see one there. So if we have a look at the buffalo behind us, then we'll have a much better view of lots of ticks. Sleepy One's wondering if the African ticks carry any diseases like the deer ticks in the United States that are carriers of Lyme disease. Let's see if we can find a tick or two of this guy. I'm sure we'll be able to. There he is, an old gentleman. If we look between his front legs there should be quite a few ticks. There we go, all over the place. Obviously causes them quite some irritation, and the oxpeckers will feed off those ticks. They also try to get rid of the ticks by rubbing against things. With these older bulls, they like to lie in the mud. And what happens quite often is the ticks get encased in the mud, and then when they rub against a fallen branch or whatnot, the ticks come off with the mud. But Sleepy One, yes, the African ticks do carry a few diseases. A couple that can jump across to people. The most common of it is called tick bite fever, which is a form of rickettsia. Actually 2 years ago, while I was in the Gabonese rainforest, I actually caught a rare form of it. It was an elephant-born rickettsia from the Central African rainforest. So nausea, fevers, quite often stiff swollen joints, but I don't think it's quite as bad as Lyme disease normally, or the normal tick bite fever we get here in the Lowveld. Let's let the buffalo think about going to join the hippo in the pan, and we're going to go see what's happening in the south and east. Hopefully there's been some movement of something in that area. While we do that, Jamie's going to give you guys a little tracking lesson.
So, we've got some really interesting elephant tracks to show you, and I want to just give a little bit of a demonstration for new viewers. This might be repetitive information for our regulars, but what's nice about this elephant track is I'm actually fairly certain I can give you an awesome demonstration in terms of scale. Let me show you first of all what it is I'm looking at. Oh, come on, son. Could you come back out, please? We had such a beautiful view. Oh, I can't even see it from this angle. We might struggle with this one now because the sun is gone. So I'll trace it out for you just to give you a rough idea. His foot, this is his front foot here, big and round. His back foot falls on top of it and has a slightly more oval shape to it. Now that's fairly common with all of the animals out here. So because they carry more of their body weight on the front half of their body, their front tracks tend to be nice and round and big, whereas the back tracks tend to be slightly more oblong. But what's really nice about elephant tracks is the fact that the back foot, in the way that it forms that point, actually points you in the direction that you're going in. And it's not often that we get to have a really nice idea of scale. This is a big male, not the clearest now that the sun's gone behind the clouds, but I can actually pretty much fit in his track. That's how big he is. So you can imagine those huge plate-sized feet wandering up the road. He's going that way. He's headed off towards, I think, towards Sydney's dam. But a really nice, interesting expression. And with elephants, you can actually see. Come on, son. Come on, clouds. Go away for us so I can show you. With elephants, you can actually see left foot and right foot fairly clearly. As soon as you pick up on the direction that they're going in, you can see where the left foot's fallen. His next step was here, and then his next step was there. You could get a rough idea. He's just ambling, but it goes to show exactly how far an elephant can cover distance in a really, really rapid kind of way, even if they're just walking slowly. So at that sort of speed, when that back track is falling on the front track, it's usually a very good indication that the elephant is just ambling and still covering easily 5 kilometers in a very short space of time. So you can imagine how wonderful it is for them in this area, and the fact that you can cover, or the fact that they have close on to 3 million hectares of area that they can wander through. You can imagine why, of course, elephants need such enormous amounts of space. Not the tracks I'm looking for, though. I'm not going to try and track down this elephant. Speaking from experience, elephant tracks like that, moving at that speed and as old as they are, there's no way we would catch up with him in time. I'm sure he's made his way across to Buffelshoek. But one of his buddies has left a nice present in the road, in the form of a roadblock, a very thorny roadblock. And this particular tree, I suspect, was targeted by elephants, just because the big bulls tend to enjoy the green shoots that grow up near the tops of the crowns. Let's go and have a look, though. I want to show you the root system. The reason why I'm having to think about whether or not it was pushed over by an elephant is because we've had some serious winds over the last few days. And one interesting thing about these knobthorn trees is the fact that they're very shallow root systems. And one of the things you're taught when you first go into guiding and camping in South Africa is not to pitch your camp underneath a knobthorn on a windy night. You can see the roots are fairly shallow for a tree of that height and size. They're long, but they don't sit very deeply within the soil itself. I don't see much in the way of chewing. This isn't freshly pushed over, and I'm starting to think I might have been wrong. It may not have been our elephant or one of his friends that pushed this over. I think maybe it might even have blown away. But that is really interesting stuff to see, and the fact that these little trees, or these big trees such as knobthorns and acacias, are actually so important within these ecosystems because they are capable of fixing nitrogen within the soil, so creating nitrogen that's actually usable for the trees. And of course they need it, as we all do, for the production of protein and DNA and so on. So any kind of replication or growth automatically needs nitrogen as part of the building process. But I think it might have blown over, actually. I think it was, the root systems were a little bit shallow. We've had a couple of stormy days and it just keeled over. But I know that you guys were really enjoying that particular tracking segment. I'm going to try and do a little bit more of those moments over the next few drives. I really enjoy, it's one of my favorite things about being out in the bush, is that you get to learn about tracking and it becomes almost like the bush is telling you a story. It's like reading the newspaper when you haven't been driving around all day. You come back and you find all of the clues and all of the evidence as to what happened while you were gone. And Michelle, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I always enjoy having a look and stopping at tracks. And it's amazing what you learn as well from animal behavior just by looking at what they've done. And this morning I stopped and watched a very fierce hinged tortoise fight outside Final Control. It was my morning off. I was making my way to meet up with the rest of the team. And there were two tiny little tortoises having one serious go at each other. And what I did after I finished photographing them, and I have to be honest, laughing at them because it was highly entertaining to watch, the one was being sort of plowed like a tractor backwards. Once they'd finished, I went back to where they had their little fight and I photographed their tracks so that next time if I see that kind of track motion, I'll always be able to identify exactly what it came from or where it came from. So I might have known by looking at those tracks, if I hadn't seen the tortoises fighting, I would have known that it was a tortoise, but I wouldn't necessarily have known what they were doing. They were just general scuff marks and so on. I know that Mumbai has suggested that maybe even Bear Grylls doesn't know this stuff. I'm sure he does. But when you live out in Africa, learning to read the signs of the bush is one of the most important skill sets that you could develop. Chatted a little bit about that knobthorn. I'm trying to catch up with this wildebeest, but he just doesn't want to cooperate with me. He's this shy one that we always see on Impala plains. And while I do, Sin, you were saying that apparently pine trees are like that in Pennsylvania with very, very shallow root systems. Of course, all essential aspects of the tree's evolution. I'm not sure if pine trees, I have no idea. I don't know them. I'm not that familiar with them. Come on, Wildy, it's okay. Interested in being seen. I'm going to just give him some space since he's dashing away from us. See if he feels a bit more secure when he gets to the open area. In the meantime, I heard a dwarf mongoose somewhere here. I hear you little guys. Where are you hiding? So the sound that I heard comes from the smallest predator on our reserve. I suspect that where Andrew's zooming in is where it's coming from. And they're tiny little, how would we describe them? They almost sound like bird calls. Hello. It's a baby. It's a little baby dwarf mongoose. No wonder they're playing so shy. Come on. One, two, three, four. So the sound that I'm making is just a standard mongoose contact call that they quite often make when they're foraging along. So I'm not scaring them in any way, but dwarf mongoose are notoriously curious And I know that we managed to actually get it. The only way I've managed to get a slender mongoose on camera was by calling it out with those sounds and getting its attention and getting it interested. That's so cute. Those are such tiny little ones. Hello. Oh. They love these little termite burrows, which is exactly why Andrew knew straight away where to start looking. But it's a very interesting looking one, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what's gone on here. So typically the mongoose will inhabit the unused or unoccupied parts of termite mounds, even if other parts are still active, because of course we know that these mounds extend. It's basically like the tip of an iceberg, and that the majority of the actual termite activity is happening deep below the surface of the ground. But I think the rain has washed away the termite mound's top layer. I think that's why it looks so odd. It looks very curious to me. It's lost its sort of surface covering, and now we can actually really get to see the system of vents and tunnels. It looks like, what does it look like? Almost like holy cheese, I guess. And those are all complex ways of being able to control the internal temperature of the termite mound beneath it. Basically a system of vents, like creating air conditioning. This is the wonderful thing about dwarf mongoose, is that they're actually highly curious little creatures. So if you sit with them for long enough, they habituate very easily, and they start to become quite curious. And I've actually sat before when I've had time and let them come right up to the side of my car. They sniff the wheels, they start to climb on the wheels. It takes a bit of patience, and it would take probably sitting here in silence for about 10 or 15 minutes, but there's a good chance that they would come up and investigate us. There's so much thought happening in these little guys' heads. Hello. So Just Me, I'm glad that you are enjoying this particular sighting. Just Me has said it's the coolest thing that they've seen so far. They are pretty cool animals. They've got fascinating social structures. Their little contact calls are adorable to listen to. And they're also ferocious predators. Our smallest predator on the Sabi Sands, or in the Sabi Sands, fierce killers of things like scorpions and snakes and crickets and butterflies. Hard to believe that such a scary predator is hidden in such a tiny facade. See them shining away in the sun. And Trish, you were wondering what their biggest predator is, and that's why they're so alert to my contact calls. Oh, sorry, Krish. Krish wants to know what their biggest predator is, and they have a variety of alarm calls, all for the different types of animals that could actually do them damage. So their biggest predator would probably be something like a bird of prey, one of the bigger raptor species. So even something like a martial eagle wouldn't object to making a snack of a dwarf mongoose. And then even the smaller ones, something like, for example, possibly a Wahlberg's eagle might give it a go. Definitely a harrier hawk or one of the goshawks, or even a lizard buzzard might give it a go, or might try and kill them. Just because I've seen lizard buzzards before take on Franklin that are actually bigger than them. So a lizard buzzard is a tiny little bird of prey, but because of that, it's specialized in really speedy hunting and surprise attacks. So those little guys have to be so alert and constantly, if they watch their behavior for long enough, constantly looking up into the sky to see if they can spot any kind of threat from that angle. The other thing that might have a go at them is something like one of the biggest snakes. So maybe a python could try, a puff adder might try, maybe even a cobra. But they are fierce, staunch defenders, particularly if those snakes get too close to their homes, and they will try and mob it. They'll band together as a group and try and hiss and scare it away by baring their teeth. So they can turn the tables on them. but snakes and birds are probably their main threat. They've decided that they don't want to be seen anymore. They've decided that we're not that interesting after all. So while we go off in search of the wonderful Queen of Djuma, I'm going to send you back across to Brent, who's still at the waterhole.
So we've moved on, and we're now at the treehouse waterhole, and it looks like someone's been having a bath in the mud, ruining a bit of the drinking water, but it is a natural seep, so it should clean out quite slowly, and you can almost actually see it flowing from the top pool down to the bottom pool there very slowly. But a big animal's had a wallow in there, and that's made it quite muddy and messy. But there are still some animals around. There's some impala on the southwestern edge here. I've been looking for old One Eye that I was seeing before I went on leave. Tebs informs me that he has been seen recently, so let's go have a close look at those male impala. Maybe the one-eyed impala is there. Hasn't quite caught up with old Horatio Nelson, Admiral, Lord Admiral from the British Navy in yesteryear. He was quite famous because he had one eye, one arm, I think one leg, and one, no, it was three ones. One eye, one arm, and one ambition. And that was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was to defeat the French. Apparently, Jamie started calling him Harvey Dent as in Two-Face from Batman. I think I'm going to stick with Nelson. Seems more dignified. But it doesn't look like Nelson or Harvey, whichever you prefer, is in this little group. But normally we do see him around the treehouse waterhole. So Jamie's looking for Queen Karula. Scott had tracks up around the Balanites tree this morning. I'm just checking this area because it is probably the closest water to where she was, to see if she maybe possibly didn't sneak down here. So far, no luck. Always check carefully in the soft sand. Good afternoon, Micah, who's in the Netherlands, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. Micah's wondering what happened to my finger. Would you believe it? After my Nyale escapade, I had a run-in with the curtain. And there was a piece of steel in the wood in the curtain. I was trying to put it back up, and it cut quite a deep cut, but just in the worst little spot. So everywhere you touch, it's there. So I decided to wrap it up so I didn't start bleeding profusely during the Sunset Safari. But not too serious, just a little cut from a piece of steel on the curtain rail. We're really in the wars at the moment. So no tracks yet. I was hoping she might have meandered this way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head now towards Philemon's cut line, and then maybe check right up towards the southwestern corner. Hello, kudus. And the female kudu. Very elegantly walking off into the bush. Those big radar ears listening for any potential predators. Oh, there's quite a few more up ahead out in the open. couple more kudu off here to the left. And the kudu closest to us, although you can just see her hiding behind the bush. There's an oxpecker on her back there. We can't really see it from where we are. But that oxpecker has prompted a question from we were watching those oxpeckers feed off the hippo earlier, from Joe Ellen. We'd like to know if they purposely keep wounds open to cause infection. I wouldn't say they do it to cause infection. They keep it open so they have access to fresh blood, would be my answer to that. And they do feed off the flesh and blood. I wouldn't say they actively keep it open to try infect the animal. They wouldn't, as far as I've never really seen oxpeckers feed off infected flesh. They prefer nice fresh blood and flesh. There we go. She's listening to every word. And you normally find it more often with the buffalo and hippo that are unable to sort of get to the oxpeckers. You very seldom see them keeping a wound open on something like a kudu, which is a bit more mobile. And also quite a lot of nice general game around here. Idle back a little bit. Don't run, guys. Not a very relaxed little herd, but still, nevertheless, some donkeys. There we go. A little herd of zebra. So there's a couple of reasons why we're finding these congregations of game in the area we are at the moment. Firstly, there is access to water at the treehouse waterhole in that natural seep that's kept active by elephants. Secondly, we are now above the sea. So this is where that water is moving down. And if we look carefully, I mean, even if we look from the right-hand side of the road in there, and you can see how lovely and green and lush the grass is around there. And that's from that underground movement of water. I mean, even if we just go look forward a little bit and look to the other side of the road, through here, you can see a lot less greenery. So the animals are here for two reasons. Firstly, that there's water, and secondly, that there's nice lush green grass that's taking advantage of this natural movement of water from the top of the crests. So from one striped donkey to another with JB.
Not sure what's happening with these zebra. I think that might have heard some kind of disagreement happening further down. I'm going very slowly just so that we don't scare them or interrupt whatever's going on. But I heard one of them doing that yip yip call. Not quite an alarm call. It didn't sound that serious. But they're very, very spooked. They're incredibly unsettled. You can see they're twisting and turning and changing direction. Now, very often windy days have this effect on the prey species out here. As you can hear, the wind is howling, as it has been for the last few days. And I'm not sure if that's what's scaring them. It's gone quiet again, but they immediately responded. It wasn't this herd of zebra that was making a sound. The sound came from a little bit further to the south of us. Let's just go forward a little bit, see if we can figure this out. Interesting. I suspect that it was a fight between two zebra. That's what I think happened. I'm not 100% sure. And I haven't seen the zebra that were making the noise further down this road. You can see them skipping and shifting around. I'm trying to work out if this is a stallion bachelor herd, because I think that it might be, and I wonder if that explains their level of unsettled behavior. I don't know, guys, it's not to do with us though, because they quite comfortably walked straight back towards the car. I think it is a bachelor group of zebra. And whatever's got them so scared has raised an interesting point for the answer to John's question. John wants to know if an animal ever would get so frightened that it could actually die of fright. It's a very unusual. What's more common, which is a similar symptom, is what's known as chase myopathy. So the heart actually stops working because the animal's so exhausted and they have a heart attack from just sheer stress and trying to escape whatever's trying to chase them. So that can be quite common, less so in lion and leopard hunts, because their attack mode tends to be stealth and then a burst of speed. They can't really maintain it. But in, for example, a wild dog chase or even a hyena chase where they exhaust the animal, that is quite commonly what happens. It is possible, though, John, that an animal could die of fright. I wouldn't be surprised if particularly with older specimens, where their heart might be a little bit more compromised. You can imagine the spikes of adrenaline that these poor animals have to go through on a very regular basis. Imagine spending your life knowing that around a corner or around a bush there could be something there that wants to eat you on a fairly regular basis. And as soon as then you can start to understand why wind blowing like this is actually so scary for them. Just imagine if you were suddenly put in a high-risk situation, but you weren't able to hear, you weren't able to smell, which for these animals is pretty much like not being able to see as well, because they rely far more on those senses. You can understand why they respond to this kind of weather by being scared and skittish and extra cautious, because if they weren't, there's a good chance that they could get hunted by something. Now, for zebra, it's quite a big animal. It would probably only really be lions and hyenas that are the actual big threats to them out here. They tend to be a bit outside of the reach of other individuals, but it's not unheard of for a big leopard to kill a young zebra. I want to go, they've moved off to the right, and I'm not paying any further attention to where I heard that sound from. But I do just want to go and investigate, see if maybe there's a reason behind it. If the wind actually throws off their scent, you're saying that it must drive them nuts, and absolutely it does. First of all, they can't tell if they hear a noise, where it's coming from or what it means. Second of all, there's constant rustling, so there always have to be those sorts of sounds that could spell a lion or a leopard trying to sneak up on them. They are unable to identify it, and they can't hear where it's coming from. You can imagine, it must be absolutely terrifying. It's like being robbed of all of your senses and put in a constant danger situation. I don't see anything. I don't see any other zebra either. I've just done a quick loop around to try and see if I can spot it. Maybe it is just the wind that's made them so unsettled and freaked out. Could also be maybe, because you never know, which is one of the reasons why we always are concentrating really carefully on reading the animal's behavior, because you don't actually know what's happened to them earlier on in the day. So they might have had a fight amongst themselves, particularly in a bachelor herd. At times like these, they do seem to prefer to disappear into thick vegetation, as they have done now.
I'm touching this morning around the Madanaki tree. Two stations in the area covering at the moment. Thanks, and I'll check it in as well.
It's a pity we don't have the best view of them, because it would be easiest to be able to answer Darlene's question by looking at them. But Darlene, who's watching in New Hampshire, you wanted to know which species of zebra we are looking at and how you tell the difference. So for new viewers, there are actually different types of zebra. They're different species. In this case, we only get one species here in the Sabi Sands, and that is the plain zebra. Used to be known as the Birchall zebra. And in that small view that we have between the leaves, look between the thick dark stripes on the backside, and you'll see that there are thin, slightly fainter ones in between. Those are known as shadow stripes, and you only will see them on the plain zebra. It's also to do with habitat, as you asked. So the mountain zebra are more towards the Cape. Unfortunately, as you guys all know, but for new viewers, we can't off-road at the moment for things. Well, we're trying to keep our off-roading down as little as necessary. We're only really off-roading for lions, leopards, and the more high-profile animals. That's just to avoid doing any further damage to this drought-stricken environment, because there's no grass around at the moment. But Darlene, if I had my book, which unfortunately I believe that Brent has stolen, well, not stolen, appropriated, along apparently with my wonderful Impala name, which we will have words about later. Darlene, I don't have my book at the moment, but essentially to tell the difference, I always find that the shadow stripes between the thick black stripes on the plain zebra, those tend to make them look slightly dirtier. The mountain zebra, their stripes don't always extend all the way down the legs, and they definitely stop higher up on the belly. So if you look at when we actually get a nice view of them, although they've moved off into very dense bush, when you see a zebra next time, have a look at the way that the stripes extend all the way down the belly, right towards the middle. In Cape zebras and in Grevy's zebras, oh, you're going to come out nicely, aren't you? Thank you, zebra. Come on. Let's try and get a nice view. Nope, I think they're going to play hard to get. And there's another animal that is very good at playing hard to get out here, so I'm going to send you over to Brent and he can show you.
So we've got a nice little group of warthog, 4 of them. Apparently Scott might have had these exact 4 in the exact same place on the sunrise safari. So there's 2, where the other 2 are off to the left side. I'm going to try sneaking a little bit closer. There's another one, and then the one's on the other side of the road. They are looking quite relaxed and moving towards us. Sometimes the warties tend to disappear at a rate of knots. These guys look nice and chilled. Oh, just hang on a second. I'll be with you guys in a second. I've spotted something. So if we go through the gap there, Tebs, there's a dugger boy in the little pan. We'll go look at him just now. There we go. But let's just try and get a nice look at these warthogs as they get onto their knees. So they have a very distinct little pad on their knees. Because they spend a lot of time rooting for grass, one of their favorite bits of food is actually the bulbs and the roots of the grass. Hello, Piggles. So, there we go. What you probably find here is this is mom and last year's babies. And that's one of last year's babies. You look in there, and there's a little male. And we can tell the difference between male and female by the amount of warts on the side of their face. So a male has 2 sets of warts, one at the top and one on the bottom. So that's a little male on the right. And I can't really see the one on the left just yet. Probably 1 set of warts, little female. And their mom's on her knees in that very distinct warthog pose. And so she can get down and get those little bits of bulbs and tubers out from under the grass. You see they're quite adept at moving around like that. It looks incredibly uncomfortable, but they seem to be fine with it. So a very warm SafariLIVE welcome to Chris P, who's a new viewer on YouTube. Oh, look, she's got a tick right in her eye there, it looks like. Or is that just build-up of... No, not a tick, just some sleep, as we would call it, so dust and whatnot that her eye has pushed off to the corner. And there we go, you see those tusks. Chris, I will bet to your question in a second. He's going to enjoy this warthog for a little longer. So we see those very prominent top tusks that stay on the tusk there, Tebs. And you see those bottom tusks. Those are actually the main defensive weapon, not the big impressive ones you see. But if you look carefully, you can see how the bottom of the big tusk is flattened. And it basically has sharpened that bottom tusk, which is called a tush. Some of them are almost as sharp as razor blades. And when you see lions and leopards, sometimes with very sharp-looking cuts, it's quite often from tangling with a warthog. And those sharp tushes do them some damage. There we go. And Mom's done quite well to raise 3 babies to almost adulthood in this part of the world with very high predator densities. So Chris P was wondering, whereabouts in the world are we? Well, Chris, we're in the northeastern part of South Africa, in an area called the Lowveld. We are in Mpumalanga province. Our province is basically like what you would, if you were in North America, call a state, and it is in the east. Mpumalanga in Zulu, and Shangaan means the place where the sun rises. So obviously the most eastern province of the country, a very apt name. We are currently within the Greater Kruger National Park, which is about just over 8 million acres of area that's unfenced for animals. It includes transfrontier parks into Zimbabwe and Mozambique. We are in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve, which is about 120,000 acres, and currently sitting on Djuma Private Game Reserve, which is about 5,000 acres. And we traverse over Djuma and Arathusa private game reserves, and together probably just under 10,000 acres of traverse. And behind the warthogs, actually, there's another buffalo who's just come into view. Reach forward a bit. There he is. And Chris, I forgot to mention, we're in the very wonderful and sunny South Africa. Warthog's making short work of that new grass that's shooting up after the little bit of rain we've had. So Bob in Massachusetts is wondering, what are the things on the side of their face? Are they hair or tusks? Well, there's both. As you can see, there's the prominent front top tusks there, and there's little white sharp tushes underneath at the mouth, and then they've got a little sort of white beard on either edge of their face as well. So there's both hair and tusks. And that's Mom and a little boy, and 2 little boys it looks like, and 1 little female. Well, we're going to let the warthog meander on. I'm going to take a gander. And I've moved into the area to give Jamie a hand with those, following up on possibly the Queen of Djuma, Karula, or it could also be Shadow in this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head to the boundary between Arathusa and Djuma and head very, very slowly and check the side of the roads, see if I can find any tracks. I know you saw a little steenbok with Jamie a bit earlier. But there we have two. So the male in the front, the little female is just walking behind. So one of the only monogamous antelopes we get out here. Oh, it was a bit camera shy, these two. Lovely little pair of Steenbok. Interestingly enough, they're also one of the only antelope we have here that are completely not dependent on permanent water. They can get enough moisture from their food and from dew in the mornings. They also dig up and can dig quite deep, little bulbs and tubers. We actually have seen sign of it on the live drives before, that they can get moisture from. But a very warm welcome to Kush, who's also a new viewer. This is Kush's second day watching Safari Live, and we're really great to have you with us, Kush. Kush is also apologizing that if his or her questions sound a bit stupid, that they live in a big city that is only full of buildings. Well, Kush, there's no such thing as a stupid question, and please don't stop sending. We love to impart our knowledge about the African bush with you guys. So Kush's question was to do with warthogs' eyesight. How good is their eyesight? They have a very good eyesight and are very adept at picking up movements to try avoid being eaten by lions and leopards and such. So very good eyesight, Kush, and welcome to the Safari Live family. If there's anyone new who might have stumbled upon us today on the Sunset Safari, believe it or not, we are on a live African safari. You are watching me at this very moment drive down a road looking for leopard tracks, and also, as you've just seen, you are able to ask us questions. If you're not sure how to do that, just use the hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter, or you can send us an email on questions@wildearth.tv. So another relatively recent viewer, Desiree from Indiana. So she's been watching since Big Cat Week. Well, we're glad to have you with us, Desiree. She says, thanks a lot to the whole Safari Live team. She learns so much about all the animals every day. Desiree, keep watching. Hopefully you can learn a little bit more. Speaking of learning, let's go to the smartest member of our team, Jamie.
I'm not sure about that. Very nice compliment, but the way that my speech patterns have been coming out today, quite possibly not entirely accurate, but we do have a lovely buffalo to show you as part of your live safari experience. Hello, boy. I think that Brent and myself have actually been covered fairly effectively this area. I have found the tracks that Scott was referring to, just to update you on my tracking progress. But it looks as though she's disappeared. The tricky thing is, and I have to confess, I thought I could tell the difference between Shadow and Karula's tracks, but I've actually decided that I can't. I've noticed that I don't always get the difference right, which makes predicting, because one of the aspects of tracking when you can't see the tracks is to try and predict where that animal might go next based on what you know about them and their behavior. And just an interesting aside, this buffalo supplementing his primarily grass-based diet on leaves from these trees. And that's a symptom of the drought, that he is munching away as happily as he is. Buffalo are predominantly grazers, and we've been seeing them focusing more and more on the trees. And the trees are essentially going to be the things that save the lives of the animals out here if this drought continues as it has. With their root systems, they're able to tap into a much deeper level of nutrients.
Afternoon, how are you?
Hello, boy. One always has to be very careful of these Duggar boys. They look fairly harmless until you've encountered them moving at 15 meters per second with 900 kilograms or close to 2,000 pounds of bulk and momentum. And Chris, you're wondering what animals they will attack and if it's only in self-defense. Now, these gentlemen in particular seem to or have a reputation for being particularly grumpy and unpleasant, and there are occasional incidents of people walking in the bush being attacked by buffalo, and it's usually when they have been startled. And quite often what happens is you come around a corner and there's a buffalo hidden by a tree, just as could happen quite easily in this situation. And it does mean that you have to be a little bit more careful and always be on high alert when you walk through the bush, and that's why that sense of hearing is so important. But imagine that huge creature coming towards you with a more nefarious intent. Hey boy, you are huge. Now, that being said, they will also fiercely fight against lions, and they will fiercely defend themselves. So mainly, animals only attack or flee when they do feel threatened. They're not like people. They're not really capable of malicious intentions in any way. Here he goes, wandering behind the car. You see he's perfectly comfortable in our presence, and he is on his way. As we look across to our right, he's actually on his way to, I think he's going to go and join his buddy there in the puddle once he finishes grazing. That's a very common sight to see. So they will fight off lions, and they will fight off any kind of predator, and quite often they win. Oh, sorry guys, hold on 1 second. Standing by. It's just Brent calling me on the Game Drive channel. Zoe's Junction Filament Cut Line.
Okay, copy. I'm checking north on Triple M at the moment. No tracks yet.
I found the tracks that Scott had just north of this junction. It looks as though they've moved off east into the block, so between Filament's Cut Line and Finn's Road somewhere.
Copy. I'm going to make my way towards Sydney Scripty for those eddies, and I'll come back to you.
Copy that, thank you. Just discussing our plan of action in terms of tracking down this female leopard.
That was a funny sequence.
I missed it. I was busy talking to Brent. Was he fertilizing a...
He smelled that poo, then had his own poo.
Oh, I see, okay. Fertilizing the open grassland for us very nicely there. But it is interesting the way that smells stimulate different reactions in animals. And that can include defecating in response to exploration of dung. Andrew. Oh. So, I was in the middle of answering the question about what animals buffalo would attack, and I said that they've got no malicious intent, but there are unexplained cases where they have, for some reason, targeted an animal that's come too close to them, and I don't necessarily, it's just because they feel threatened. And of course, for all of our regular viewers, surely the first thing that comes to mind was that poor wildebeest calf that was only hours into its life. In fact, not even an hour into its life. That buffalo is dozing. He is moving. And this poor little wildebeest calf wobbled its way towards sort of new life, having just managed to stand up on its own 4 legs, and a buffalo turned around and threw it with its horns and hit it. And there's no real explanation for that behavior except that sometimes they are a little bit more grumpy than normal. These Duggar boys in particular have a reputation for being quite unpredictable in terms of their reactions. And just quickly, in order to answer Christopher's question, Christopher, no, this is the only species of buffalo that we get. Christopher wants to know what the difference is between a water buffalo and a Cape buffalo, and whether or not we see any water buffalo on Djuma. So no, we don't. The two species of main species of buffalo that you get within Africa itself are the Cape buffalo and the forest buffalo. And the forest buffalo are a bit lighter in color, almost a reddy color with slightly smaller horns. The Cape buffalo is very widely distributed all the way from the Cape up towards Eastern Africa and beyond. They're a bit bulkier, as far as I know, they're a bit bulkier than water buffalo, slightly different shape in terms of their horns. And as it happens, a very similar evolved niche, but occupying completely separate areas. So we only find the Cape buffalo here. Although they do like their water. Hello boy, have you woken up now? He was dozing in the sun. And Kitchens, who's watching in Texas, and Daniel, who's watching in the UK, both of you want to know about what causes those white marks around the face. The best explanation is the fact that they have glands, much like the other antelope species as well. They have what are known as preorbital scent glands around the eyes, and they use that to rub their scents both on each other and on things like sticks and trees. I suspect as well that those glands get quite itchy, because I very often see buffalo scratching when they've started to scent mark. So those white patches are actually bald patches that have been rubbed away by the rubbing motion. That being said, you do get bald patches throughout buffalo herds on the various parts of their bodies, and those can be caused from anything between mange, a parasite, some kind of parasite infection. Quite often fungal infections also cause baldness around the buffalo. So you do get bald patches that are not just on their face, but typically those patches around the eyes that you were referring to, I assume, those are caused by rubbing around the scent glands or the preorbital glands. He's having a wonderful time wallowing in the mud. Lisa, I'm sure that Andrew says it's an absolute pleasure for the close-up of that. Andrew enjoyed it. He's grinning quietly to himself in the back there and nodding softly. But Donna, you are absolutely right. It's got incredibly green. We have got this really nice new shoot growth that's coming through. It looks incredible, and it's only a couple of days after the rain. We did say that it was going to go green pretty much immediately, but it's so nice to see, and it's nice that the rain came at a time where we haven't reached the sort of the cut-off growth point for the year's plants. So essentially they stop growing and developing and producing new cells at around the end of February, March. So the growth slows down almost completely. So it's nice that we had the rain when we did. It has provided everything with a new lease on life, us included. It is such a relief to see the animals enjoying themselves. I think what I'm going to do is leave our buffalo for now. They seem quite peaceful and happy. I'm going to go and do a loop around, see if I can follow up on where Karula went. She's a tricky leopard to track in my experience. But hopefully, because it's been nice and warm today, she'll be resting up somewhere in the shade of a tree and conveniently waiting for us to come and find her. Variety of a discussion about the various animal senses, and P. Hart, you were wondering about infrasound from the various animal species, and the one that comes to mind initially is the elephants and the way that they communicate. So they've they use very sub-frequency rumbles, a frequency that the human ear actually can't pick up. And they use that as a way of communicating. Those waves of the sound travel through the ground and then can be picked up by elephants very far away. Hello. I know that you were just looking at these guys with Brent, but they're still here, happily foraging away. I'd be interested to know exactly the range of animals' hearings. Just while we're sitting with these warthogs, we know that it's better than ours. I was watching a very interesting documentary before I started out on this drive that looked into the senses of various domestic animals and the way that they hear and the way that they smell. And their sense of smell, they can almost pick up, it's like seeing, but with your nose, which to me is incredible. I know that Brent was chatting to you. They don't look terribly threatening now, though, but I know that Brent was chatting to you about the tusks of the warthog and the fact that the sharper tusks are actually the bottom ones, and that's the ones that they rely upon for defending themselves. And Lynn, you were wondering why then is it necessary for them to have top tusks, which is actually a very good point. Why have top tusks if they are just for show? And the answer is exactly that. They are for show. They're useful for digging, but mainly they're quite useful for looking more intimidating. And that's the reason why when they're born and you've got the little ones, I love watching them on their ankles like that. With the really youngsters, the ones that haven't started growing their tusks yet, you actually see those fluffy bits of fur on the outside of their face that are much, much lighter in color than the rest of them. So for these guys, that's started to go dark now because they are actually growing tusks of their own. But you can sort of see what I mean. And those are built, or those are designed that way to imitate tusks and make baby warthogs look more intimidating. Not that one could actually ever find a baby warthog terribly intimidating, but you never know. So it is for display purposes more than anything else, Lynn. It's a way of looking scary, but actually hiding your true weaponry. Speak softly and carry a big stick kind of deal. And an animal might focus hard on avoiding those top tusks and be caught very much by surprise by the presence of the bottom ones. Also, always useful for digging. And then for the males as well, a way of battling things out without actually doing each other serious harm. So much like the impala spar, a way of fighting without doing any serious damage over females. And yes, Teresa, you are absolutely right. Sorry, distracted by impalas being silly. They make this incredible deep grunting sound. I'm not sure if you can hear it. Almost sounds like barking. Now, I'm fairly certain that that is not alarm calling. That sounds to me like males chasing each other round and round. They're still sort of gripped in the throes of this hormonal chaos that the births of all of these impala lambs have caused. And it's making them go into almost what's like a false rut, where they dash around after each other and try and fight each other. So that's the sounds that we were listening to there. But it's always important to listen out for calls like that, because impala especially are very, very good alarm callers. They don't ever give false alarms, and they are exceptionally alert and aware of their surroundings. Now, before our warthogs disappear off, I was just in the middle of saying to Teresa that I know Steph chatted to you about never standing in front of active burrows out here because you never know what might happen. And one of the big reasons for that is because warthogs reverse in. And I've told this stories many times of moments when they explode out, and they seem to explode out with roughly the terminal velocity of a NASA rocket. And it can actually be exceptionally terrifying. I've had a few moments in the bush where I've been standing near a warthog burrow, and they've decided that actually I might be a threat, and they zoom out so fast you have no idea, and they kind of explode in a cloud of dust and noise and absolute chaos. I've had a few people scream before, guests of mine, when it happened, but the most recent one was actually the one that we had on bushwalk, where Steph and I were tracking. Brent was doing the bushwalk, we were tracking, and Brian was there as the cameraman. And we knew that there was a warthog in this burrow, so we approached over the top of the termite mound, and this thing exploded out. I wish you could have seen us all launch in different directions, except for poor old Brian, who of course couldn't launch, but luckily was standing a little bit further away. Well, I wanted to show you that woodlands kingfisher that has been sitting watching me chat about the warthogs, but he's disappeared. And in the meantime, Brent has some crossing pachyderms to show you.
So we heard a report of a big group of elephants around the sort of northeastern corner, and all we found is this young boy. It looks like the rest have already skedaddled across the boundary. At least we caught up with him, and you can see he's got some takeaway. Can't see exactly what type of tree he's chewing, but he's taking it with him. So probably around 20. No, maybe a bit older, 25.
Pisikaya before empty.
Well, welcome to the Sunset Safari. Daniel, who's popped us an email. Daniel would like to know, what is the biggest species in Africa? Well, on the land, Daniel, we're looking at him. The African elephant can weigh normally around 6.5 to 7 tons, a big bull. But I think the record ever was from Angola, and I think it was around 12 tons for the biggest body-sized African elephant. Here we go. This guy probably weighs around 5 tons, 5,000 kilograms. And a youngish bull. And here he goes. Hello, big boy. Looks like he's finished his takeaway. We're right on the boundary. Unfortunately, it does look like he is going to cross. And these bulls are capable of traveling vast distances in a day in search of water and food, or in search of ladies. He's probably just coming into the prime where he's going to be able to compete for females. There he goes into Simbambili. Oh, anyway, nice little interlude. Back to the rest of Daniel's question. So what was the biggest animal, or the biggest land animal in Africa? Is definitely the African elephant. Daniel's next question is, how hard is it to get a job out here? Well, Daniel, that all depends on you. If you have a true passion for nature, there's numerous different training courses one could do. However, I would generally recommend an internship, so approaching some of the lodges, see if you could work for free, be a bit of slave labor, and that's, for me, is the best way, and the way you learn the most and learn the fastest. And you'll quite often find that those lodges, if you do well on your internship, they will invest time and money into you, depending on what field you want to go into. Of course, not only is there the sort of job that is the most obvious and the most romantic, which is what we do. There are, in the lodges themselves, there's lots of different jobs. I mean, you have to have chefs, you have to have hospitality, wine experts, food experts. So lots of different avenues that can lead you to live and work in the bush. And of course, there's also the wildlife filming as well. So you've got cameramen like Tebs, who's behind me. Hello, isn't that lucky? More elephants. Another young bull, by the looks of things. Hello, cheeky chops. Okay, go behind us. Let's just move back a little bit. There we go. After you, sir. So using the exact same path that other bull was following. A bit younger, this guy, probably just below 20 years old. And he's a bit shy, he doesn't want to walk too close to us. So you can see, and over that fallen tree with the greatest of ease. Now there's a water hole in the direction that all these eddies are heading on the other side of our boundary. So I think they're off for an afternoon drink. And again, you can see from his body language and the way he didn't walk right next to us, not 100% relaxed. No way he's threatening us, but he's just a little bit nervous out there on his own. So no need to follow him and push him. We'll watch his big grey backside disappear through the bush, but we're not going to off-road after him. There we go, you can see disappearing down a prominent path there that is formed by elephants. And these paths often lead between water holes. So if you're ever stuck out in the African bush and nice and thirsty, hopefully you can tell which way an elephant track is going. So strangely enough, I've had some very entertaining days in the bush. I actually let a trainee guide track an elephant backwards for about 2.5 hours before I let him know he was going the wrong way around. So hello Isabella, who's only 4 years old. Welcome on the safari, Isabella. Isabella would like to know, does either of those elephants weigh more than our car? Yes, Isabella. The first elephant probably weighs 3 times the weight of this vehicle, and the second one probably 2 times. So double the weight. So he's twice as heavy as our car. So we're going to slowly head back towards the area where Jamie was. And see if we can give her a hand with those tracks. Hi, Cameron. Cameron is 6. It seems like our younger viewers are out and force the sunset safari. Cameron would like to know about lions roaring. Cameron, can you make a lion roar? I can teach you how to make a lion roar, but I'll ask you a question first. Cameron would like to know, when a lion's calling, is it only his family who can understand it, or do all the other lions understand? Cameron, all the lions that can hear that can understand, because basically what a lion's doing is he's telling all the other lions that this is his house and they mustn't come here. But Cameron, let's see if you can make a lion's roar. So what you want to do is you want to start a noise like this. So you want to start with a deep noise. You go, So with your mouth closed, so Cameron, I hope you're practicing lion roars, and hopefully I'm sure you'll get it down in no time. Mumsy in Ohio, a very warm welcome to bustling African bushveld, Mumsy. Mumsy would like to know about our opening title sequence. There's a leopard who snarls quite viciously, and Mumsy would like to know which leopard is that. Well, Mumsy, it's my favorite leopard. It's a leopard by the name of Djuma, one of Karula's sons from her last litter. Last litter that survived, and he is quite a snarly leopard, a very strange character, and that's why I like him so much. He's a little bit more shy than his brother Quarantine. Also the first leopard I managed to track on foot here at Djuma, but he snarls quite regularly at vehicles for no apparent reason. Can be lying next to you, licking himself, happy as Larry, and all of a sudden, so that's one of the reasons he's my favorite. He's slightly mad in the head, just like me. So that's his Djuma. So we're heading into that area to help Jamie see if we can find where that leopard went. So let's go see if Jamie's got an update. Just before that, I'm going to chat to her on the radio while you guys are still with me, and then we'll jump across to Jamie. Jamie. Jamie, have you checked western edge of Quarantine, or would you like me to check it? Copy, thanks. So Jamie and I are going to be in the same area trying to find what we think is possibly Karula, the Queen of Djuma. So let's see what updates Jamie's got for you.
Well, you've all heard my plans now as to exactly where we're checking and how we're going to plan this out. I figure if it is Karula, this is our best bet, is to check along these drainage line areas that she absolutely loves. She loves to move around that Quarantine side. What have you seen, Impala? I've stopped to watch their behavior as well. It's always a useful gauge to try and figure out if a predator has walked past fairly recently, but they look fairly relaxed for a windy day. As I said earlier, they are very useful alarm systems. Always on alert, constantly double checking. And there's absolutely no sign of Harvey the impala, the one-horned, one-eyed impala. I get the Nelson name, I get the Nelson reference, but I feel as though that decision has already been made. Now, generally, Harvey or Nelson, depending on whichever one you prefer, and I'd love to actually hear from you as to which particular name you prefer. Harvey is in Two-Face, or Nelson, obviously Lord Nelson. I assume that is the reference that Brent is trying to make. Now, he likes to hang out around Elephant Carcass Road. I would be surprised to see him here, but it's not impossible. Generally, what you find is that impala herds tend to enjoy being in a fairly similar place. A nice group of bachelors of all ages here. The one at the back hasn't quite got his full head of horns yet. Tips still pointing inwards. That puts him at just under 4 years old. He's probably about 3. Then with the other individual moving along to his right, that little sub-adult is only just hitting the 2-year-old mark now. So you can actually judge the age of impala according to the size of their horns. And then at the back, that particular ram is a fully grown adult male impala with a full head of horns with that beautiful curve, and that puts him somewhere over the age of 4 years old. And while they're growing, they grow at quite a defined rate, and they've also been joined, apparently, by a lovely herd of zebra. How nice. Many eyes make for plenty of warning. So you very often see the grazers moving around together. This is all part of the same seep line that Brent was chatting about earlier. Oh, wow. The wonderful thing about these live safaris is that we actually get to spend an incredible amount of time. Oh, I just turned my radio down. You don't all need to listen through those conversations. But Darlene has asked a really interesting question. She wants to know if we could go anywhere in the world to observe animal behavior as we do. And I'm assuming that this place doesn't count, Darlene. You wanted to know if and where we'd go. And you've said that personally you would love to have a SafariLIVE experience with the grey wolves. I think that would be incredible to watch their behavior and to spend time with them and learn as much as we have learnt about the animals that we know around here would be one of the most phenomenal experiences. I always find it difficult to be able to answer a question like that because there are so many wonderful, magical places to go to. I mean, this personally, for me, this is where I've been born and bred, and this to me will always be my favorite place to be. Experiencing the animals of the African kingdom I find fascinating and special, but that doesn't mean I'm not open to the idea of observing. I think snow leopards would be incredible, observing their behavior. Whales, if we could spend more time with whales and really get to follow them and learn. We know so little about the way that they're structured and the way that they communicate with each other. I think observing that, we'd learn such a huge amount. A SafariLIVE experience with gorillas or the great apes would also be incredible. That's why, bless you, Andrew. That's why we need you guys to all tell your friends to jump on the back of SafariLIVE so that we can expand to all of the wonderful magical places that the world has to offer. That being said, I think that the SafariLIVE experience on Djuma and Arathusa brings us some really, truly incredible moments. And of course, that level of unpredictability is what makes this so much fun. Oh, now our impala are making Andrew's life very difficult because we wanted to chat a little bit about them and answer Donna's question. So there goes the last little creature. Donna, you've said it amazes you that such a dainty, graceful little antelope can make such a loud sound, and they do make the most incredible grunting sounds. The first time you hear it, it comes as such a shock to realize that it's coming from an impala's mouth. Absolutely. I always find it entertaining as well. I think you're absolutely right, Donna. But sometimes small people can make a lot of noise. I know I certainly do it occasionally. But it is a very useful sound that they make. And that grunting sound during rutting, our new viewers, keep watching. Because when we get to May and June, which is the actual impala breeding season, we will be able to treat you to such an interesting experience watching those impala and the way that they behave. For about a week, a male will have managed to herd together a group of breeding females that he guards, and every time one of them tries to move away, he will very fiercely move back and chase them away. And for that week's period, he doesn't eat, he doesn't groom, all he does is fight and chase the ladies. Now this is our stallion group that's moving behind the bachelor group. And I think that they were hearing that breeding group that we just saw with the impala because they're moving behind them. And I'm sure there was just a little bit of a skirmish earlier between the different animals. Sorry guys, I'm just seeing if I think I heard my name on the radio. Nope, it has gone quiet. They are unsettled still, and I said that it was probably due to the rain, but I actually think it might have been a bit of an internal fight between the breeding herd stallion and these gentlemen that are following along behind it. But you never know, they might have caught the scent of Karula. And Kush, you were wondering how far away these animals can actually smell the scent of a predator. Depends very much on the wind direction. So at the moment the wind's blowing quite seriously, it feels like from the east. So if a predator is moving in from the east, they would be able to smell them at about 1 kilometer. But for the most part, the scent of predators is very, very powerful, to the point that the animal can't necessarily pinpoint exactly where it is. It's really that the scent of smell puts them on alert, so that they know there's somewhere around there is a predator in the area, and that they must start to look and to listen for any kind of threat. There's plenty of testosterone running through this particular zebra herd. Not often that you get to see so clearly that an animal easily, or a zebra is easily identifiable as a male, but I think the testosterone levels are playing havoc with them. And Kush, you also wanted to know whether or not the zebra only eat green. And no, they're actually quite amazing animals. The reason that they look so round-bellied and fat is because of the fact that they are hindgut fermenters. So it produces a lot of gas in those bellies. And it's because all of their digestion happens of the grass material. It happens in their intestines, and the bacteria that are breaking it down spend a lot more, or produce a lot more gas than you would see in the other antelope species, for example, that are ruminants. But what that means in terms of advantage for zebra is that they can actually survive on food quality that is slightly less, because they can just keep eating. They can eat in bulk. So even if the grass isn't green, they can still survive and get the nutrients out of it. It's a slightly different approach to the ruminant antelope. So something like a wildebeest that is roughly the same size or weight, or a comparable weight with a zebra, they eat about half of what the zebra eats. So each type of digestive system has its different advantages. And I'll try and have a look for the dung of a zebra. It would be a nice way of just comparing how rough their digestive system is, the chunks that are left within the dung, and then being able to compare it to, for example, a ruminant. Hello, boys. Have you been causing trouble with the rest of the breeding herd? I've loved stopping to have a look at the zebra. And of course, many of you know that my favorite predator, or one of my favorite animals, in fact, to spend time with is the spotted hyena. John, you wanted to know how they're doing? I promise I will be, unless something completely unforeseen happens or Karula wanders out into the middle of our zebra sighting. If I don't manage to find her, I will head across to the hyena den a bit later, as it starts to get cooler and we've got more chance of there being some activity. So in the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to make my way through. Oh, actually, this is a really good opportunity for Darlene's question that I completely forgot about. We were trying to talk about it earlier, but you wanted to know the difference between the different zebra species. And if we have a close look at any one of these individuals, you'll actually be able to see what I was talking about, the shadow stripes. There you go. If you look between those thick, dark stripes around the rump and around sort of middle of the back, and you can see those slightly paler stripes in between, or the shadow stripes I was talking about. And that is very clearly diagnostic of a plains or a Birchall zebra. None of the other zebra species, so the Grevy zebra, the Cape Mountain zebra, Neither of those have those shadow stripes, and their stripes also don't extend down to the center of the belly in the way that these ones do. They're also a little bit stockier and a bit shorter, the mountain zebra that is, than the plain zebra. The plain zebra are slightly taller in terms of size. And quite often with the mountain zebra, you don't see the stripes traveling all the way down to the bottom of the leg either. But that's not completely diagnostic, because different individuals have different stripe patterns. So these are the plain zebra, and at least we've had a nice opportunity to finish off answering Darlene's question. And I think I'm going to leave these boys now and go carry on with my search for this female leopard we've been tracking. As I said, I haven't actually encountered any tracks coming across this road, as you heard me telling Brent. But what I want to go and do is check the old hyena den. It actually kills two birds with one stone, because I know one of the other viewers was asking whether we've done a check of any of the other hyena dens. Hello guys, sorry, don't worry, it's all good. Bye-bye, gentlemen. So they'll form these bachelor herds that they're in at the moment, much like the impala do as well. And what it basically means is that for young stallions that are kicked out of their herd, they at least have a little bit of time to spend with other older males that can teach them a bit about sparring, they can practice fighting with each other, but it also means that they've still got the protection of a herd, rather than being off on their own as they start to grow up and develop. The same process applies with the young impala rams. They can actually practice on each other until they get to the point where they're big enough and strong enough, and it usually happens at around 4 years old, that they are able to actively compete with other males and compete for access to females. So what zebras start to do at about that age is they go and they seek out breeding herds, which could be what's been happening here with this interaction and why both zebra groups look to be a bit on edge. They can actively seek them out and pick a fight with the stallion that is in control of that group. And once they do that, then if they are victorious, they will then have access to either one of his daughters or his least favorite mare, so his bottom ranking mare. Hello, impalas. One of our 15-year-old viewers. Mimi, you wanted to know, we chatted about the senses of the animals. You wanted to know whether there's any kind of predator that doesn't have a smell that could alert their prey items. And no, they all carry their own personal scent, but there are some that smell more than others. So lions in particular are incredibly stinky. Wild dogs certainly carry a very, very distinctive scent that is easy to pick up upon. Even we can smell that. And I've often found wild dogs by the smell and then starting to look around and to check for them because I've picked up on their scent first. That's because, first of all, with lions, the entire area for the animals essentially reeks of lion anyway. So having that smell doesn't really compromise their stealth. But for wild dogs, they don't rely on stealth at all. They course, they run. And they just wait until they interrupt or, oh my word, it's slightly overgrown here at the moment. Everybody duck. Watch your heads and your eyes. And the virtual reality rig, most importantly. You okay there, Andrew? Good. You're ducking away. And Mimi, just finally to finish off your question, you wanted to know about the scents. I think that leopards probably have the least, or are the least smelly. They're quite fastidious in their cleaning routines. Although I have seen them walk walk up to hyena scat and roll in it just for fun. Probably not for fun. There's probably a deeper reason behind it. Oh my goodness. You can do it, Jigger. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Some serious driving tests here. Oh. Luckily we've got these wonderful little cars that are more than capable of any challenges that this terrain can throw at them, for the most part. Even when Brent drives them. So this is the old hyena den that I was chatting about. And I like this route just because it allows us to come and have a look into the drainage line. There's definitely no sign of any hyena activity here. So what I'd be looking for if I thought this den was active, I'd be looking for freshly excavated tunnels, chewed on sticks, freshly chewed on sticks. You've seen the way that the hyena cubs like to nibble around. And then any kind of sign of fresh scat around the area. I'm not seeing any of those things. It does give me a nice opportunity to just double check this side. The problem at the moment, what's really tricky about tracking leopard right now, is that after the rain, some of the patches of soil are still damp from the seep line system that Brent was chatting about earlier. And what that means is that the soil goes very hard, and tracking leopards, they don't leave the deepest tracks for us to follow. It's all quiet here. No sign of the karula. Now we've got to negotiate our way back out. Brent's back up and running, and he's found a little bee eater to show you.
Sorry guys, we're just trying to catch up. There he is. Beautiful little bee eater. Stunning little birds. Busy hawking in this area, feeding off all sorts of flying insects that come past them, so sometimes quite difficult to keep up with. Come on, turn around now. Show us your good side. So we've been seeing quite a bit of them at the moment. Really nice. Saw them on the sunrise safari as well. And at night they are the cutest. Sometimes you'll find 5 or 6 in a little ball all together. Constantly checking for any aerial insects to grab out of the sky. Quite often they'll fly off, catch something and return to the exact same perch. So let's see what this little one's up to. So it's the smallest of the bee eater species that occur here. The other 2 common ones that we do see occasionally are the carmine bee eaters, European bee eaters, and very, very occasionally white-fronted bee eaters. And then very rare in the Sabi Sands, I've seen them a couple of times, swallow-tailed bee eaters. Where's the other one? There were about 3 or 4 of them around a bit earlier. Oh, right in front of us. Swooping. Oh, actually was so close to us, we just didn't see it hiding. Oh, off again, behind the bush. Let's try to sneak a little bit forward. Oh, being very accommodating, this little fellow. Not disappearing. Such a beautiful bird. Yes. And as Nikki says, you can see it's turquoise mascara. I think that's how Nikki likes to go out on the town, with turquoise mascara. So there's quite a few little green bee eaters in Africa, and they all do look a little bit similar. So this is the only one of the, or I suppose we do get swallowtail very rarely here, but swallowtail's got a blue tail, and obviously it's a forked tail like a swallow. But those are the only two of the little green bee eater species we get in this part of the world. They are definitely one of my favorite families, and I'm quite lucky. I've seen quite a few of the different bee eater species in my travels. There are 19 different species in Africa, and of the 19, I've seen, there's that little swallowtail we're talking about. Here we go. That's the little swallow-tailed, and there's the little bee eater we've just been looking at. So out of the 19, and then a blue-breasted, as you see, can look very similar to the swallow-tailed. I mean, to the little, but quite a bit bigger. And I see those in Gabon. So out of the 19, I've seen 4 Bohms. That's my favorite one, by the way. Bohms bee eater. This one down here. There we go. So how are we doing? How many? There's 19 in Africa. I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, I'm missing a page. God, I've seen more than 8. Ah, yes, there we go. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 out of the 19 species that occur in Africa. And I was lucky enough to see some of the really rare little forest ones, like the black bee eater. The only one I didn't manage to find while I was in Gabon was the blue-headed bee eater. And probably the most prominent and impressive bee eater in Gabon is the rosy bee eater, and incredibly endemic, and only occurs on very few areas. So along the Congo River is one of their homes, and they share nests, and they're ground nesting bee eaters, and they often nest on the beach. So you walk down the beach and suddenly this explosion of color comes out of the sand, and big colonies up to 1,000 birds, and they nest on the sand there, and they often share their nests with another very rare African bird called the African river martin, which is a really pretty type of swallow. The Wahlberg's eagles that pass through that part of the world, as well as certain of your forest eagles, have learnt to grab the bee eaters. So they actually land and grab them as they come out of their holes. I've actually seen Wahlbergs do that in Botswana as well. So Wahlbergs have, in certain areas, adapted to hunting bee eaters. Welcome to M in London, who's trying to be sneaky because M is watching at work. I think that's a very good idea, M. M would like to know, what is the sort of size of the bee eater? Aren't they supposed to be quite small? Well, they range, M. The little bee eater, being the smallest we get here, is around 15 to 19 centimeters. So probably about that big, and that's including the tail. So probably about smaller than my hand, actually. If you take the tail away, probably just that size there. And then your bigger ones, your carmines, your rosies, they can get up to sort of 25, 30 centimeters. And a little comment from Heidi saying the beautiful colors always surprise her. We are blessed with some incredibly beautiful birds here, and thankfully we've got the equipment to show it to you. So Heidi, hopefully we can show you some more fantastic colors on this sunset safari. Oh, excuse me. I swallowed a bug. Wow, sorry, I swallowed a bug as I turned there. lovely warm welcome to Kat in Tampa, who's become a regular viewer and questioner. Well, that's probably the wrong wording there. And questionnaire, maybe, possibly. And Kat's just saying, watching SafariLIVE has inspired her to buy a South African bird book. It's incredible, the amount of beautiful birds. Well, Kat, after the South African one, you're going to have to get a bird book of Africa. So Southern Africa has about 950 resident species, with the odd vagrant here and there. And Africa in total has got about 2,400 different species. I myself, as an avid twitcher, which is a birder who spends sometimes ridiculous amounts of money and time looking for a tiny little bird species that might be as drab as a block of cement. And out of the possible 2,500 or so African bird species, I'm on about 1,600 for Africa now. 2 major zones I got to get to maybe push towards that 2,000, and that's Ethiopia. And there's a lot of endemics and incredible birding up in North Africa there, and also the Sahel region of North Africa, so Chad, Mauritania, that sort of part of the world. There's still quite a few species you see as well. So a trip back to the rainforest is if in order. On the subject of birds, on the sunrise safari, Andrew and I were trying to find a tiny little bird, a little favorite of mine. It's called a green-backed Cameroptera. It's a little type of bleating warbler. We unfortunately couldn't get him on camera. We have got him on camera before, but we did hear that very distinct little me call that the Cameroptera makes. Abo. So I'm just on the game drive radio for a second. So I did hear a report that there were some elephants around this area somewhere. I'm hoping they're still around. Just trying to find out exactly where they were. Well, it seems like Idle's not listening to his radio, so we'll try again just now. We'll try guess ourselves. We said near Gowrie, Maine. Still on the subject of birds, Scott's saying he's now up to 45 species. Well done, Scott. You're nearly at that magical 50 mark. And Daniel Kupovitz on Twitter is asking if we ever seen a pygmy kingfisher. I saw one for the first time in the Eastern Cape this festive season. Well, strangely enough, Daniel, I actually saw one this morning. Unfortunately, it was after the safari sitting outside my window. We actually see them quite often. Now we're in it. Oh, where did it go? Try getting some. BJs, if you're a serious bird. Oh, is this here? You got him there, Tebs. That tree there, I'm just going to go back a little bit. So the beautiful, but this is quite a, okay, you got there. So directly over the stump. Okay, go a little bit to the, come out a little bit. There we go. There it is. Let's have a look there. Now there's one to test you guys. So it's a tiny little bird. We have seen them on live drives before. Just wait for him to turn his head a little bit. Very distinct body shape and beak shape for the birders out there. And let's see if we've got any really hot-shot birders who can identify this with it. And remember, if you can identify this little bird, you can send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter. So this is now some little bit above beginner birding. This is slightly more advanced. We do see them quite often. We don't stop for them because, as you can see, they're not the most brightly colored, but I decided it's time for the guys on their bird lists to up your game and see if you guys can identify this little guy. So we're looking at let's just stay there for a second. I'm going to give you guys some pointers. So what you're looking at is that when he turns his head, the bare skin around the eye, the general shape is the most important giveaway, which will put you in the right family. And then if he does fly, you want to look for possible white windows on the tail, on the edge of the tail. Oh, there we go. Hopefully turn for us. There we go. You can see quite pale under the throat. There we go. He's putting a nice little preening display for us. Let's see if we've got some hot-shot bird watchers out there. While I'll let you look at them for a bit longer, get some really good visuals. Zoe was wondering, she can't remember whether I said whether we get ostrich or emu here. So we get ostriches. Very uncommon in the Sabi Sands. They generally prefer more arid areas. I have seen them in the Sabi Sands before, a little bit south of here, and it was one female ostrich, and it was the only one we saw. But probably about 50 kilometers to the east of here in the Kruger National Park, on the basalt plains, where it's a little bit drier, you see ostriches there quite frequently. So I think this bird's even got final control baffled. Well, our first answer is from Tom in Dallas, who seems to be creating bird species. And he says, I think he might be referring to the sort of general family of the beak being a seed eater. It is not, unfortunately, Tom. It is not a seed eater. It's actually a little insectivore. So there's a little hint. It feeds on generally little insects, flies even. And a very distinguishing feature about this particular one is the all-grey tail. So a lot of these little guys often have white windows on the edge of their tail. This one does not. And that white eye circle Cloud's Gate is correct, and I said if you're serious birders, you start getting fanatical about LBJs. Well, this is and it basically stands for Little Brown Job or Little Brown Jobby. So well done, Cloud's Gate, who's got that spot on. Oh, look, the light's coming in to give you a slightly better look. Well, we've got another answer in, which is a common fiscal shrike. I'm afraid that is not right. Fiscal shrikes are much bigger. They also are predatory, and not to say that the insectivores are not predatory, but they do have that very distinct hooked beak. And common fiscal is black and white. So I think we've had a good enough look. I'm going to leave you guys alone for a little bit, see if you can figure it out. And there's a common fiscal there. Oh, Ollie in the UK says, is it a dusky flycatcher? Ollie, you're in the right family, but it's not a dusky flycatcher. So there we go. Ollie's on the right track. Let's see if we can get to the actual flycatcher. So from one of the smallest little birds we have out here, over to Jamie, who's got one of our larger bird species.
Look at this beautiful pair. I think they've been squabbling. I think it's two males. And there's another one calling. That's the call of the red-crested korhaan, and that's what we're looking at the moment. Look at him bobbing away. If we're really lucky, we might even get to see the red crest come up, although I think they've already decided the victor of this particular contest, and they've moved off into different directions. But they're such striking birds when you really get to have a closer look at them. Their incredible cryptic coloration. Now you can see why quite often we hear them, but we very seldom manage to get them on camera for you. This is just a little bit smaller than the black-bellied bustard, and you can tell the difference for avid birders because the black doesn't extend all the way up underneath the chin and the neck, which makes this a red-crested korhaan. Such a pretty bird. Look at that colouring. I'm just going to have a look to see in my bird book. Oh, if my bird book's made an escape. Hold on a moment. My bird book went walkabout. Look at him responding to the call of that other korhaan. I'm trying to see if I can spot it, but it's just on the other side of the road somewhere. And at this time of year, you get to see some really amazing displays from these particular birds. They fly high up into the air and then drop their wings. And that is the female. The longer the male actually disappears into the air, and I'm looking at this one, this little guy here. The longer the male stays up in the air and then tucks his wings in and disappears, the more attractive the female finds it. It's also what's given rise to their nickname of the suicide bird. That is the red crest that I was talking about, and I'm fairly certain that we were indeed looking at two males, because you can see how in the female, which is this bird here, she doesn't actually have that blue tinge as much to the head, whereas the males seem to, and they have that blush around the cheeks. Now, that is very cool. First time for me that I've managed to get a red-crested korhaan on camera, so one to add to your bird list. In the meantime, Brent has found something slightly bigger to show you.
Come to front of me. Oh, look at this. To the left, we've got a big elephant bull. Right in front of us is a monster with beautiful tusks, and he's in musth. You can see the inside of his legs dripping. He was just chasing some females around. There are 3 bulls around this little group of females, so it's possible that one of these is an estrus. Oh, look at this boy. He is magnificent in his prime. What an awesome specimen. Hello, big boy. So I think it was Isabella or Cameron asking earlier, was this elephant bigger than this car? Now this guy is probably 3 to 4 times, Isabella, 3 or 4 times heavier than our car. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bulls, 5 bulls around us. So definitely they think maybe one of the females is an estrus, and they are now following the herd. I just saw this big bull over here to the right of us chase one of the smaller bulls a little bit earlier. And the female herd is actually a herd we've seen before. It's the female with the half ear. Oh, isn't he beautiful? So if you're hearing that click click, that's just my camera taking a few pictures of this beautiful big bull. And in this beautiful late afternoon light. Tebs and I were actually discussing a bit earlier, like, oh, the light's so magnificent, but there's no animals to put in it. And fortunately now we have this incredible Ellie bull along with all the others around us. So this one closest to us is the biggest of the bulls. He's tall, he's massive in the shoulder. I mean, if we come out, we'll remember this exact little bush here, and I'll come stand next to it a little bit later once the Ellies move off. You guys just have to remind me, but he's massive at the shoulder. So if I stand exactly where his foot is, so I'll probably try stand there. I think I probably will only come up to about there. He's a good 4 meters at the shoulder, I reckon. And also that other bull, that one there, is younger, but also incredibly tall. He's not nearly as bulky as this guy yet, but that one there is also incredibly tall. You can see that very high shoulder, but he's younger and not as big as this boy here. You see, this is 1, and then 2, and then 3, and the 4th bull's behind us. I can't see the 5th bull at the moment. Oh, he looks like he might try to make a move with the female, and that could prompt the other males to get involved. So here, there's the female. Oh, isn't this amazing? Surrounded by giants. Look, 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 here we go. So as soon as those other bulls come near the female, the 2 biggest bulls, which is this one and this one, sort of zone in, keeping the younger boys at bay. Now imagine it's quite a thing if you are a male elephant, because you reach sexual maturity at about 12 or 13 years old, but you don't get a chance to mate till you are in your 30s. Probably late 20s at the earliest, but normally around 30, because of the competition between the big bulls for mating rights. Please don't go that way. Unfortunately, they are right on our boundary. Well, a little quote from Jamie says it's like all the parties you go to the bush, all the boys pushing each other around the girls. Quite often in the bush, there's a definite tendency to have a higher number of boys than girls. Unfortunately, they are mobile across our boundary. Oh, that was really spectacular, even if it was just for that short time. Literally, that's one of my favorite things, to be surrounded by giants like that. Vicky says, what a prime specimen of an Ellie bull. Agreed. And massive body size, nice, long, even tusks, no broken tusks. So the male model of the elephant world. You can see the younger bulls hanging back a little bit behind the big bulls and the females. So Kim B says she loves the social structure of elephant herds. It is very interesting, Kim. And the only time you generally find the bulls trailing a herd, I mean 4 or 5 bulls with a herd like this, and big adult bulls, is when there is a possibility that there is going to be a female who's going to be an estrus. So looking for some mating rights. Generally the bulls will avoid the breeding herds, a bit too much commotion for them, and like to sort of lead either a bachelor's life or sort of live in little bachelor groups. Here we go, they're disappearing. Unfortunately, they're moved out of our traverse, but what a wonderful, wonderful little interlude. And now that they've moved, and before I forget, let's go back to that bush. So he was massive, I think about 4 meters at the shoulder. So I am 190 centimeters, so nearly 2 meters. So I remember we were parked about here, hey Tebs? Here we go. So and that was the little bush there. The Eddie was standing over here. His foot was about there. I should be able to see his tracks. So let's have a look how tall he was. Oh, I'm caught in my ears here. Got to remember to take that thing out. Oh, elbow as well. I really am in the woods, man. And have a look carefully. There we go. I can see where his foot was exactly. So there we go. So I'm 191 centimeters, and I think he was around 400 centimeters. So even if I put my hand up, I don't think I would touch the top of his shoulder. So incredibly big bull. Hopefully that's enough so you guys can see how big he was and try to work out. And I'm going to get back in the car. I'm feeling a little bit awkward now all of a sudden. Oh dear. What is going on here? I've lost, that was close. Nearly lost half my ears. We do go through a huge amount of earpieces due to the rough and tumble. They're caught on branches when we're off-roading, or you can be forgetful like me and pull them out as you get out of the car. You can see the sun starting to set. Oh, sorry, just getting my everything back in order. Well, nice to know our younger viewers are also partaking in the bird quizzes. Gracie, who's, if I remember correctly, about 8 years old, says, is that a cinnamon bun bird? I think Gracie's referring to a cinnamon-breasted bunting, which is one of her favorite birds. Well, Gracie, we'll see if we can find you a cinnamon bun bird, but no, it wasn't a cinnamon bun bird. So Daniel and Judy are in the right area. Daniel says, I've decided, a grey tit flycatcher, and Judy says a pale flycatcher. Daniel, you're closest with the grey tit flycatcher, but it's not, and I'll explain shortly why not. So we have 3 birders out there who have got it spot on. Joan in England, who said she is an avid birder, who said a blue-grey flycatcher, and Rebecca and Raisa say an ashy flycatcher. So an ashy or blue-grey flycatcher is the same bird, it's just a different name. Currently, there we go, number 6. So I remember I told you to have a careful look. Oopsie, let me move that. Use this finger. Oh, that one. There we go, around the eye. for the white, we couldn't quite see those little sort of feathers that almost look like hairs, but I said to look carefully at the tail and the wings and look for little white windows and things like that, and that was a hint. So Daniel said, where is he now? There we go, a grey tit flycatcher or fan-tailed flycatcher or lead-coloured flycatcher. So very, very similar looking. Guy does have the white throat, does have that eye patch. But if we look at the tail, the edge of the tail has got those white outer tail feathers or white windows in the tail. So they are very, very similar looking. They're almost the exact same size. They're 14 to 15 centimeters, both of them. So the big difference there is that the tail is not as dark and in the blue, gray or ashy, and it lacks those white outer tail feathers. But well done, guys. That was not an easy bird, and really well done to those of you who got it right and those of you who got into the flycatcher family. We do get both of them here, and I know we have seen the great tit flycatcher on drives before. So Heidi says she's been watching Safari Live for about 8 months now, and says every drive brings her new and astonishing animals. Well, glad we can bring them to you, Heidi. We do love sharing our home with everyone, wherever you might be in the world. So it seems like quite a few screenshots are coming through with a comparison of my heights and the Ellie. So you can see how massive that bull was, and what a really wonderful little interlude in this awesome evening light. But hopefully now we're going to go across to Jamie, who might have a lot of our viewers' favorite little creatures in this beautiful evening light.
Yes, indeed. As promised, we are on our way to the wonderful hyena den that has provided us with hours of entertainment and learning potential. I'm very excited to see how they're doing. I feel as though my extended about 2 day absence, I'm starting to feel it quite keenly. I want to go and see what they're up to, and if those little cubs of the matriarchs are starting to get brave enough to really show themselves. And of course, we've got to time it just right, because as we've said before, we can't put a spotlight on a den site like that, and especially not with cubs as young as our little cubs are. So for new viewers, you are in for a serious treat. We're making our way just before it gets dark. It's nice and cool, so there should be plenty of activity happening. I've been back to where I last had tracks for that female leopard, and I've checked all around. I can't quite figure out exactly which direction she went in. I think she might still be in the block somewhere. Sorry guys, I need to go on the game drive travel.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Copy that.
I just need to, there's another vehicle there, so I just need to pull myself in. Andrew for Jamie.
What do I do?
Andrew, are you the only station at the Misikaya?
Yeah, affirmative. I'm the only station. The 3 Montwana visible, and the 2 other on the east side, no good visual in there.
Copy that. Can I join you?
You're welcome, Jamie.
As usual, our impala herd is here. They always seem to be around the entrance to this particular den. That is a nice big bachelor herd that we were just looking at while I was on the radio to Andrew. Now, as I said, we can't spotlight hyena dens. There's also a very strict rule that you are limited to 2 vehicles at a den sighting, and that's just to reduce the impact that we have while we observe the animals. You don't really want 3 vehicles clustered around a den. 2 is absolutely fine, and as you've seen with our hyenas, apart from minor curiosity, they are quite content to continue to go about their daily business without being terribly bothered by us. I see that there's been some work done, making sure that the off-road track, that everybody sticks to the same off-road track. Well done, guys. Reducing the impact that the vehicles have in making the roads to these hyena dens. Well done, Nikki and Kirst. Good job. And all of these little steps are really important because we're so privileged to be able to share this environment with these magical animals and to drive around in such a beautiful area. And obviously for us, it's absolutely essential that we minimize the impact that we have in any sort of way possible. Andrew tells me that the cubs are out and about. Definitely in for another one of these wonderful hyena den sightings. I can already see June, one of the other sub-adults, and it looks like November's out. Here we go. Oh, and one of the twins as well is up on the slope. Awesome. Have a little one. That looks like one of the December twins. Not sure where its sibling is, but you can see how the spots are really starting to come through on its shoulders and its neck. Hello, little one. Ah, there's the other one. Well done, Andrew. That looks like the other December. D1 or D2. Still a little bit wobbly, but really starting to get brave and coming right out. He is now anal pasting, copying that animal or adult instinctive behavior, which yesterday, or the last time I was at the hyena den, I described as a social media update, essentially, for the hyenas, and we suggested maybe renaming the process of anal pasting to tweeting. I think it was Susan's suggestion, I can't remember exactly, but one of the viewers suggested that maybe we rename the term anal pasting. What are you chewing there? Got a piece of something. And hyena cubs are so entertaining to watch because they've got that burning curiosity about the world around them, and they investigate everything with their mouths. Little December twin with the right foot, or the white foot, running to investigate. I've never seen that white toe, or white toes like that before, like this one has on its back left foot. I've never ever seen it. Oh, here comes June. And December twin not really quite up for the rough and tumble just yet. Look at that size difference between November and the December twin. It's amazing to watch their progress and how fast they grow. All ears and curiosity, wanting to join the game, but not quite feeling brave enough. Wobbling back towards the safety of the den, and probably because Corky is not here, and Corky is the mother of this little cub, and so it doesn't feel secure enough to really get caught up in the rough and tumble, because if he starts squeaking, if it gets a bit too rough, doesn't have a way of being saved by mom, which explains the caution. November has no such qualms. Finally brave enough to make a tentative move in. We saw June a little bit earlier. I've lost track of where she went. But Angela, you were wondering who brings June food. And Angela is referring to the fact that we actually haven't seen June's mother. So that's one of the older cubs in quite a long period of time. It's now been, I think, about at least a week since our last sighting, if not more. Now, it's not uncommon for mothers of older cubs to spend more extended periods of time away from the den, so we don't need to... I'm not too worried just yet. I'm hoping that it's something that we just haven't seen her, we've just missed out on seeing her, and that maybe she's coming in the middle of the night to bring June food. But Angela, if June's mother is no longer around for some reason, June, I think, could well be old enough to survive on her own. She'll follow the rest of the clan to scavenge. I'm not sure what they are all rolling in. It could be that one of the sub-adults has urinated. They do enjoy rolling in each other's urine. They're all very fascinated by whatever's happening there. But there you can see the comparison nicely. Amazing to see how we've grown, how they've grown over the last 2 months that we've been watching them. Dashing about. Luckily for June, she's got plenty of companions to keep her occupied while her mom's away. And Angela Pinto, you were wondering if June is now the babysitter. I wouldn't go that far, although she has done a sterling job of entertaining the cubs and playing with them gently, which is always fascinating to watch. And she's spending a lot of time at the den. If there is a chance that she has been separated from her mom for some reason, she knows that the active den site is the best place for her to be, and she still fits comfortably into the den holes. Look at that size difference. November, I was about to say November acting the bully, but she then ran into a tree. I am keeping my voice down as much as possible just because there is another vehicle in the sighting. So I don't want to disturb their experience of the den site either. They are having a marvelous game. And November's, I have said before that I feel like November is probably my favorite. You shouldn't have favorites, but just watching this little one's character develop has been such an entertaining process and fascinating to watch. And I love this den site. It's definitely one of the most picturesque ones that we've seen them at. Watching these two gamble around, it's really tricky for us to see exactly whether or not they're male or female. And William, who's watching in Potchefstroom in South Africa, you were wondering at what age you can tell the difference between males and females, and if I know the gender of the twins, the December twins. William, it remains tricky for the first few months of their life, right up until the subadult stage, and possibly even until the point that they breed. And for new viewers, the reason behind that is the females have pseudo-penises. So they essentially look very much like males. And you can't really necessarily tell just by looking unless you start to see, like we can with this cub, the genitals. Now, typically the males have a slightly pinched look towards the end of their penis, whereas with the females it's a straighter looking, it doesn't really have that nipped in look towards the tip. That being said, for unbred females, so young females that haven't reached sexual maturity, it is very, very tricky to see.
Jamie, 400.
Yeah, Andrew, standing by. Sorry, William, I'll get back to your question.
I just want to make my way out of here.
Copy that, Andrew, no problem. I'll move out of your way. Sorry, guys, we just have to move so that Andrew can negotiate his way out of here. As you can see, we have really quite effectively parked him in, and he won't be going anywhere unless we shift out of his way. No problem. How's it, Andrew? How are you? Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye, Andrew. And while we reposition and get ourselves another nice view of the cubs, Brent has found you a kudu that's acting rather strangely.
So while Jamie just checks around, moves a little bit at the hind end, we found this kudu that is looking very, very nervous. You can see how on high alert she is. And we've just stopped here and we're just waiting to see if she doesn't possibly spot a leopard for us. We have checked carefully around, but she is on a very, very high alert. Very nervous. The other kudus behind her also are like that, but she definitely on far more alert than the others. It's possible that she might have smelt something, heard something, and that is causing her to be extremely focused, that she thinks there might be a predator around. She hasn't moved for about 7 or 8 minutes. She's just been really, really on high alert.
Copy, thanks, Andrew.
We're gonna just stay here for a little bit longer. I never know what might be here. And there's definitely enough sort of worry in her eyes, for lack of a better description, to make it worth our while to just sit here for a little bit longer. So while we stay with this high alert kudu, and let's go back to Jamie with the cute little hyenas.
Still with our hyena cubs in some of the most beautiful evening light. Such a stunning setting that they are in. They've calmed down a little bit, still feeling playful though, and I was still in the middle of answering William's question about telling the difference in terms of gender. The best way, one of the best ways to tell is to watch their behavior, because of course males are always more submissive than females. That being said, cubs are cubs, so it can be quite tricky. Males and females are both playful, although the males tend to be a bit more subservient and a bit less bold than female cubs tend to be. And that because, of course, is because the females have very high level of testosterone and androgen that gives them those incredible male-like physical characteristics. Totally unusual in the mammal kingdom to have a setup in the way that spotted hyenas do. So the best way is for them to reach sexual maturity. So around 2 is when you can start to see properly the difference between the pseudo-penis of the females and the actual penis of the males. And I know of plenty of researchers who have got it wrong in the past, so it's really tricky with hyenas. I think he's gonna puke. I'm not sure what it was that December had it coughing like that. Now, we've remarked upon the spot pattern that's come through on December. Oh, something's upset your stomach. You've eaten something you shouldn't have. Back to November, sorry. We remarked a lot about the spot patterns and the fact that they've started coming through, and that they've even started coming through on the December twins as well. And for those of you who are as interested in IDing the different hyenas, and some of our viewers have become absolute experts and put in incredible amounts of time, hours and hours, in terms of putting together collages and essentially ID kits for the various hyenas. Now, November's spots pattern, for those of you who are unfamiliar with spotted hyenas, and those of December's as well, watching from across the den, will be the same for the rest of their lives. So we'll always be able to identify them. The difficulty is that as they age and they get bigger, those spots start to expand slightly. So although the spot pattern doesn't change, they end up looking quite different in their own way. You'll still be able to tell, so those of you who would like to be able to identify November, got some really nice spot patterns, a very straight line of dark spots on her right side. Whoops. What was that about? Okay. That happened very quickly. And cub's gone. Well, in that case, we'll move forward to the matriarch and have a look at her. I haven't seen any sign of her new cubs, but that doesn't mean they're not just suckling. Of course, for new mothers, they can suckle for up to an hour at a time. That is her favorite entrance to the den. Oh, hello. Come out the other side, have you? Just very clear evidence that those tunnels are connected. You just never know when a hyena cub is going to pop out, or where it's going to pop out. Careful. Get yourself into trouble. There you go. You can see that line of spots I was talking about on November's right side, sort of sloping slightly diagonally down. Ooh. And we can actually have a look at her genitalia quickly. I'm trying to see. It's tricky. I think, no, James Taylor. Oh, there's no cubs there. She wasn't suckling, but the matriarch decided that she wasn't having any of the cubs' attention. They're bored and making trouble. She's up. I just want to see how this... Okay, we'll have a look at them in a moment. But that incredible moment where the cub fell into the den, we'd love to actually show you again. So we've got a very, very brief replay that we're going to play for you now. Enjoy. And it's nice to know that I'm not the only animal out here that occasionally falls down, and that at least the hyena cubs also do it. Matriarch's coming down all of a sudden. I call her Madam. That's my name for her. She is huge, and her shoulders are healing. And behind her, I'm pretty sure, is Bella. She's wandering off. November's followed her. Not that brave. Gambling up. Now, I've been trying to tell the gender of this little individual, But I do think that either way, November's mother is fairly high-ranking. Pretty is fairly high-ranking. Ooh. Well done, Andrew. Right behind him. Look who's responding. Now, the reason that I didn't immediately reposition to try and see her is because I know that as soon as I start my engine now, I'm going to startle the cubs back into the den. As soon as the adults disappear, they start to become much, much more nervous and sensitive of the actions of those around them. I also know that path that the matriarch is following now leads into a very, very dense part of the vegetation. But how cool were those contact calls? Announcing who's bossed and that she is on patrol. Oh, it's amazing. That's one of my favorite sounds out here. And there the cubs are still visible. But as I said, I didn't want to startle them back into the den. Here we go. Bye-bye, guys. That was brief but very enjoyable. The matriarch's heading out, I think, with purpose. She definitely had determination in her body language. The contact calls are a way of communicating both with the rest of the clan, letting them know where she is and what she's up to, and then also communicating with the clans outside of this particular territory. Now, behind her was that sub-adult that we think is Bella, which means that is her son from a previous litter, or from a previous litter before these two new cubs. And Rain, that actually brings me to the next part of the answer. And I don't think these cubs are going to go out, so I'm going to see if I can catch up with her. Ow, I just hit my knee. So Bella is the matriarch's son, essentially. And that raises a very interesting point, which is the question that Rain has asked. So, Rain, you wanted to know if the male cubs of the matriarch are treated any differently from the other males, or whether all males are treated badly. And, Rain, that's a really, really good question, because the answer to that is actually that the males of the matriarch are the one exception to the rule. They tend to stay around the den longer, as we've seen with Bella, even though Bella's mom has new cubs, and they can be dominant ever so slightly over the more subordinate females in the group. So for people who are watching for the first time, hyenas have this very complex social system, and they have a rank, and it's a very strictly enforced rank. When we talk about the matriarch, we talk about the top member of the clan, the queen of the clan, essentially. But her cubs inherit her status, much like royalty is born into royalty. So the males of the matriarch are the one exception to the general rule that males are treated badly. He would still be very subservient to the other females, particularly the high-ranking females, but he might have a little bit more dominance over the more subordinate, lower-ranking members of the clan. Now, we always suspected that Bella was a male, just by watching the way that it was treated by other females. But they are very careful about the way that they treat a matriarch's cub, regardless of whether it's a male or not. And if you've seen how stocky she is, Nikki's branch file, if you've seen how stocky she is and how powerful she is, you can understand exactly why they would be nervous of her. wandering off, probably to go looking for something to eat, especially for that new matriarch. She's a new mother. Sorry, not new matriarch. She's a new mother, which means that her body is under very high demands in terms of providing food. And the impala are now on edge because the hyenas have come past. And Peter Gitu, that brings me to the next point. Hyenas are always thought of as scavengers, but of course they're one of the most effective hunters out here. And that applies to the males and the females. And in fact, probably you'll find that there's quite a high level of percentage of the males that spend a lot of their time hunting, because as lower ranking members of the clan, they have to wait for their turn in order to scavenge and kills. So what they usually do together is they forage in groups, either alone or in groups of 2 or 3, and they can then actively hunt, and they'll target things like zebra foals. It's quite common, or wildebeest calves is also very common for them to target. Now that call, oh wow, beautiful evening sky. Sure, that is stunning. Fortunately though, we have hyenas to find. No sunsets. Must find the hyenas. We heard her calling as she made her way up this drainage line, and that incredible woo sound woo is her communicating, as I said, with the rest of the clan, as well as with other external clans that might be on the boundary. Watching in Colorado, we very briefly got to see her as she was making that call, and it's been, oh sorry, it was Cheryl who was asking the question. So Cheryl, you wanted to know, as we've seen them occasionally, we really struggle to get them calling directly in front of us on camera. They always try to go behind us and do it, but when they do that call, they stick their heads right down into the ground and they go woo, with their head facing downwards. Wondering why they do it into the ground. I've always seen them do it. Wild dogs do it as well. They also do their contact calls into the ground, and I think it's a way of resonating. I think it's a way of actually bouncing it back and out. It somehow amplifies the effect of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is an aspect of the vibrations that actually go into the ground as well. I don't know. But there must be some kind of bouncing back effect, a way of maybe, not necessarily amplifying it, because you'd think that the best way would be to lift your head up, but maybe of ensuring that it goes not necessarily just in one direction. I don't know, I've seen both wild dogs and hyena do it. Lions don't though. Lions roar, straight up, with their heads straight up. This is usually where they pop out. Wolves also howl upward. That's a very good point. I don't know. Good point, Andrew. I've started, after a conversation with Liam, started nicknaming this clan the Baby Boomers, since they have been prolific in terms of their successful reproduction and their successful cub raising. And Paul, you were wondering, sorry, not Paul, Brian, you were wondering how hyena numbers are controlled if they do have this incredible reproductive rate. This is an interesting situation. They've been as successful as they have been partly because of the drought situation. So they, as scavengers and as predators, they are bound to benefit as with any other creature. I also think the reason that our clan is doing so well, I don't know, this may be a bit of a stretch. Hear me out. I have a theory that it's to do with the Birmingham Boy, or there's a connection to the Birmingham Boy takeover. And the fact that those 5 lions caused such chaos that the lion prides shifted in the way that they did and never really settled around, particularly around these active den sites. So lions are the biggest threat to hyenas. They will go out of their way, especially young male lions, will go out of their way to catch and kill hyenas if they can. So really, it's not the cubs that are in danger. It's when they hit that sub-adult stage, June's age, the twins' age, Bella's age. that sub-adult stage where they start to move away from the den. They don't have the survival skills of the adults, they don't have the knowledge of the adults, and thus are put more at risk of attack by lions as well as wild dogs. Wild dogs will also go out of their way to kill them. So lions and hyenas have struck up quite a delicate population balance in that respect. But I think that, I don't know, it makes sense to me that the hyena clan have done as well as they have, because the Birmingham boys have, the presence of the Birmingham boys, the actions of the Birmingham boys has actually led to the movements of the lions, first of all not settling in one place, but also not settling anywhere around the den. Let's take this shortcut road. Let's see if maybe the hyenas pop out here. Trying to figure out where exactly they're going to go. I'm not sure. You guys can let me know what you think about that particular theory for regular viewers. And while I go and search for my hyenas and find out what they've been up to, let's find out what happened with Brent and that kudu.
Sorry about that. As the link came through, I was going through a very deep little drainage system. So apologies. Unfortunately, that kudu maybe smelled something. I couldn't. Here we go. I couldn't see anything. We spent about 20 minutes with that kudu, but nothing happened. So we left the area. I'm going to go do a last gander around the waterhole. Maybe Karula makes some surprise appearance.
We do apologize. It seems as though Rusty's signal is playing guessing games with us. It's always a matter of guessing where exactly we might lose the poor presenter who is driving around on Rusty's. It is being worked at. We are looking at it and trying to sort her out. It's always interesting that each car has its own, which is why we name them, of course. Each car has its own little characteristics, and sometimes they throw tantrums. This afternoon, for example, I went to go and turn on Jigger, and for some reason the immobilizer got jammed on and then screamed at us. The hooter screamed at us for a good 2 minutes before we figured out how to turn it off. So you never know what, just like the live safaris, you never quite know what to expect from one of these vehicles. Constantly surprising us. The wonderful thing is, though, that you actually become very, very fond of the vehicles that you spend. I mean, as you can imagine, we spend a very large portion of our lives driving around on them. You do start to become attached. I'm still looking around for those hyenas, and the fact that the matriarch that was calling, they haven't popped out on this road that I can see. But we spoke a bit about her contact calling down into the ground. And Carol, you've actually raised a really, really good point, that perhaps they make that sound, or that they look down because that's the way their throats are structured. Now, I know a lot about lion vocal cord anatomy and the roars that they make, and all of the members of the Panthera family, with with that roaring ability. But I've actually never ever looked into the hyena larynx anatomy. And of course, they're capable of such a variety of different vocalizations. The clearest, I mean, the most well-known one is that woo sound, but they also giggle when they're excited or they're nervous. They giggle around kills. They've got all kinds of sounds that they can make. And maybe, Carol, you are absolutely correct. It seems pretty logical to me. Fascinating stuff. Well, good news is, bumpiest road on Djuma. The good news is that Brent is back up and running. So let's pop over to him so we can find out what he's been up to.
Sorry about that, folks. It is part and parcel of operating live in the African bush. Occasionally we do have some little spots that the signal tends to not work so well, and it's really strange because sometimes they seem to move. So we're quite close to Gallagher and Vuyatela camp at the moment, and a favorite hangout of Queen Karula's. So just going to have a quick look at the waterhole. Who knows? Maybe she's there. So, good evening to Trish in Toronto. Trish, I feel it's about as cold here now as it is in Toronto. But Trish would like to know, why are sightings of vervet monkeys and baboons so rare on the live drives? Well, I don't think vervet monkeys are that rare. We see them quite often. They actually raid our camp quite regularly. They're probably just sitting in the DRC. But with baboons, there's no real permanent or big riverbeds which have lots of big trees, and that's their preferred area for roosting. I mean, we do see baboons very occasionally, and Arethusa, and I have seen them on cheetah cutline, and I actually have even seen them on quarantine before, but it is unusual, and especially now with this very dry time, a lot of the fruits that might draw those baboons in are not fruiting or not in the abundance that they might normally be in. So that could be a reason we're not seeing them this year. Maybe a bit of rain might change that, I'm not sure. Vervet monkeys we have plenty of. They're all over the place. And we do see them relatively often. Often when they are out in the bush, they are quite nervous, so they tend to move away quite quickly. So sometimes we're not able to get the camera on them fast enough. So, well done to Joan in England, who's reached 151 species of bird on the live drives with that blue-grey flycatcher or ashy flycatcher today. Joan says she calls herself a birder who twitches and says, please keep showing us the smaller birds. And I definitely will, Joan. Maybe we will have a look for some more LBJs tomorrow. So, unfortunately, it doesn't look like Queen Karula has arrived at the waterhole just yet. Maybe she'll come a little bit later, but it's been wonderful having you guys with us, and don't forget to join Jamie and Scott for the sunrise safari tomorrow, and keep twitching, keep those lists going, keep an eye on the Djuma pan on the cam there. There's a strong possibility that if Karula is in this area, she will pop there. And now off to Jamie so she can say goodbye with the second largest mammal we get here at Djuma.
We're not actually referring to a tree. There is a giraffe there. He just waited until Brent finished chatting to you before disappearing behind the tree. Most extraordinary colors this evening are starting to come through. I think it's going to be a beautiful evening, and Andrew and I have just remarked on how incredibly cold it is for this time of year. Bizarre. We've gone from some of the hottest temperatures I've ever experienced to one of the coldest January evenings I think I've had out here. I'm not sure what our weather's doing, but I think it might be the tail end of that cold front that came through. But yes, as Brent said, please keep an eye on our Djuma Dam camera for us. Let us know if you see any sign of Garuda coming through. I wouldn't be surprised. She likes to walk that particular route, so you could well get lucky at some point this evening. Ah, I see. Brent wanted me to just correct something that he said. He wanted to let you know that when he said it was the biggest, he meant the tallest. So he just wanted to clarify in case you thought that he'd lost his mind or that he got it wrong completely. Definitely a crucial correction that he had to make there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be driving around with the back of all of you on our vehicle. Thank you, Andrew, for all of your fantastic camera work and managing to catch that wonderful moment when the hyena cub tumbled into the den, which is hugely entertaining for all of us. Don't forget to join us for the sunrise drive tomorrow morning, where we'll be starting out, I'm sure, looking for the wonderful Queen of Djuma. And thank you to Nikki and to Kirsty and FC as well as Eugene. Have a wonderful day, everyone. See you tomorrow.